Okay. We're reading jokes in the chat. That's a good way to keep everybody going. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Here, I've got the recording going. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started, though. I know we'll have a few more people filtering in, and hopefully everybody will get connected this evening. It's so cold out there. I hope everybody's staying warm. I'm Kimberly Phoenix, and I am the current president of GC Sage. And I am so honored to welcome all of you to our first installment of a brand new series that Sage is trying out called Your Future, Your Path, Career Conversations with People Who Found the Right Fit. And the Sage Board is just really super excited about this new series and the idea of sharing with our families and our students some more non-traditional careers and career paths. Because if we've learned anything in this past year of COVID year, it's that we all have to get comfortable with non-traditional. Before I go into a couple of really quick housekeeping things, I did want to give a shout out to somebody who was going to lead us through this presentation tonight, but he's feeling a tiny bit under the weather, so I'm going to step in. I see him here, but I just wanted to say thank you to Joe Sanchez. Joe is a current member of our Sage Executive Board, and he's been doing most of the behind the scenes work with organizing and getting this new series up and running. And he has some really amazing things to share with you all in the coming months. So I know you'll see Joe next month if you join us on the big screen here. But I just want to say thank you to Joe and for taking the lead on the program. And I also just want to do a couple of really quick housekeeping notes. We are recording this. So hopefully we will, if all technology goes well tonight, we will get that loaded up in the next couple of days for anyone who maybe registered and wasn't able to make it here this evening. We do have everyone on mute except for myself and our speaker this evening. So let's keep them on mute just so that we can, kind of protect all that background noise and everything that's happening on in our houses. If you have questions throughout the program, please feel free to use the chat function. Amy Warren, our past president, she's going to help me out over in the chat function with answering some questions or kind of queuing them up and letting John know if we have a question coming in about something he's specifically talking about in that moment, or maybe we'll just queue them up for at the end when we feel that's most appropriate. And you can, in the chat function, I'm sure y'all have done so many of these, you know this already, but you can type the question directly to myself or Amy, or you can put it out there public for everybody else to see. So don't be shy, you can do it privately if you aren't sure. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of this, we'll have a few minutes to let folks unmute if they are not at their computer and they're just dialing in. So if you have some questions, we'll give you an opportunity to unmute and ask that towards the end. So it is now my honor to introduce John St. John. He is going to be our lead-off speaker for our new series. And John, I am going to let you take it away and introduce yourself. And I'm going to go over and share the screen that you have ready for your PowerPoint.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And Joe and Kimberly, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone that is part of this audience. Initially, I work for Dell Technologies. It's Dell Computer Company here in Texas. And I originally spoke to them about a program that Dell has to discuss opportunities for explaining to high school students what it means to be an employee in the technology industry, because we employ a lot of people, and a career path to this has a tremendous opportunity for you from the perspective of your financial future, your long-term career future, and the opportunity for a lot of creative and exciting work at Dell. And we like to let the high school students know what is needed to take advantage of that opportunity. And when I spoke to them about my interest in speaking to this group and kind of my background, they suggested this particular program, and I'm real excited to be the inaugural part of it. So I think what we're going to do is to kind of talk about me and where I wound up at my career, and then switch over from there to some of the things that Dell is looking for, because we are a massive employer in the state of Texas and in the world, and what the future needs are if you are considering studying things in college, and where some of the problems are going to come up that you're going to have to solve between now and, let's say, 2030, when you'll be either graduating from college or just taking your first or second job at that point in time. So I grew up in Texas, in a town called Friendswood, south of Houston. And the high school that I went to, Friendswood High School, at that point in time was nicknamed NASA High. And the reason is it was right across the Gulf Freeway, I-45, from NASA, from Clear Lake, from Johnson Space Center, and from Ellington Air Force Base, and all the things that drove NASA in Texas. And everyone's dad was an astronaut or worked at mission control or something along those lines. There were constantly kids that were pulled out of class for 3 or 4 days to go and watch a space shuttle launch that had their mom or dad, on it or as closely associated with it. And while I was in school, I was definitely, from the time I was a young kid all the way up, what you would consider today to be GT, which meant that studying was not a priority for me, although things that interested me took up a lot of my attention. And I was in Boy Scouts. This is, a photo with bad hair at that point in time, and I apologize for the look of it. Varsity swim team. I wound up being the literature club quite by accident because of some things that I did and a teacher that liked me a lot. Academic decathlon, and lots of science competitions. And I really wanted to be Jacques Cousteau from the time I was a little kid, and that continues now, not necessarily in that particular field of marine biology or oceanography, but it continued that drove where I wanted to be from a career. And I also wanted to be a professional skateboarder. And that's actually taken, yesterday, that photo. I still have a skateboard today. It's a little more potentially damaging at my age, but I'm still very interested in that. And I often complain to my mom that had she let me be a professional skateboarder, I'm about the same age as Tony Hawk, and he's certainly more successful as a skateboarder than I am today. So that's another career that you can consider. But I wanted to stress that some of the things that I didn't do growing up in high school, I didn't have high enough grades to make National Honor Society at my school. My considerations for college were primarily around being able to swim in college. I was on the varsity swim team, but was not good enough for a program like Texas A&M or UT or the Southern California schools, places like that. And I definitely did not become well-rounded. That list of things up there that I did sounds like a lot of well-rounded, but in today's general career path that some high school students fall into, of specific sets of activities and all of the required service hours and things like that, I didn't build a portfolio specifically for college. And that was something that I wanted to make sure that people understand. That is certainly a path that one can take coming out of high school, but it is not the requirement associated with choosing a high school career that goes into college. And so if you go to the next slide, I was clicking it myself, but if we can jump to the next one. There we go. There was a significant event in my life. As I mentioned, I wanted to be a scientist, and I was actually quite good at science. When I was a freshman, I won part of the National Science Fair. And in the National Science Fair, there are multiple areas that you can enter: biological sciences, life science, at that point in time, agricultural sciences, all kinds of things, physics, math, things like that. And I won the agricultural sciences division that year of the National Science Fair as a freshman. And it was part of a program that the National Science Fair and NASA had done that year for Teacher in Space. And it was very lucky that I got that, because I happened to be situated. Kids were all across the country with their projects. Each of their projects was going to go on this particular mission, the Teacher in Space mission 51L, in 1985, to be the tests that the teacher, Krista McAuliffe, was going to perform on the space shuttle. Since I lived very close, my mom would pick me up from school and take me across the freeway to NASA. And I got to work with engineers on NASA's campus every day after school on this particular project. And I was fortunate to get to go to NASA, traveled to Cape Kennedy. And the photo that's there is actually me with several of the teachers who were part of the selected teachers that were not the ones that were eventually selected for Teacher in Space. So there were backups and multiple teachers. That photo of me with the bad 80s haircut and the legitimate members only jacket from 1985 was me there at that event. And I was also invited to, and I sat next to some Secret Service agents at the memorial for the Space Shuttle Challenger death of the crew, where President Reagan spoke, and I got to shake his hand and was there at the events following that. So this was something which was a big event in my life, probably as big as 9/11 would be for a group of high school students today, or some of the other events that have occurred. And it's something that carried with me, an understanding that science has a lot of meaning in this world and a lot of impact. Even if the experiment doesn't get an opportunity to be tested, there's a tremendous amount of impact that science has. And that furthered my interest in science as a career. And from this freshman photo all the way through high school, that's definitely what I wanted to be. And if we can jump to the next photo, or the next set of info. I went to college. I chose a school called Stephen F. Austin State University, located here in Texas. Great college. It's in Nacogdoches, Texas, in East Texas. And the reason I picked that was that I wanted to be on a swim team. And they were Division III and happened to have an opportunity for me to swim on that team. And what was curious about that is shortly after that freshman year, they cut the swim team. It was part of some changes that occurred with athletics and Title IX and some things like that. But I didn't let that throw me. This was just something that was an event, wasn't going to get to swim in college, not that big a deal. And I shifted focus and I studied a lot of different things. I wanted to be a chemist. I wanted to be a physicist. I wanted to be a math major, a biologist. I eventually got a BS in biology and chemistry. And it was my sophomore year of college that there was a note taped on the chemistry department's bulletin board that said that they were looking for undergraduate researchers and did anyone want to propose projects and see. And I proposed a series of projects and got time on the laboratory bench to test those things. That molecule that's sitting there is called a Buckminster fullerene, and it was the Nobel Prize in 1998, I think. But prior to that, it had been discovered at Rice University here in Texas. And I proposed a set of experiments with that led to research that we did for the final 2.5 years of my undergraduate. In fact, I applied for grants and was able to get them because some of the grant agencies didn't realize that I wasn't a professor at that particular university. And so they awarded them. And then the chairman of the department called me into his office to let me know that he didn't realize I was applying for grants as though I was faculty. And I said, well, technically I didn't say I was faculty. And we sorted it out, but it gave me an opportunity. And it was there that my career choice changed. I wanted to be a doctor. And the reason I wanted to be a doctor is that my parents really thought becoming a doctor was very important. And so I focused every bit of my effort. My wife will even tell you this. My first few years of college were focused, and we met in college, were focused on being a doctor. And it was a Fulbright scholar in biochemistry who came up into the lab in the middle of the night and saw me working and said, what are you doing? And I said, working on this and that and the other, and fullerenes and carbon nanotubes and stuff. And he said, well, why do you want to be a doctor? And I said, well, that's what I want to be. And he said, and I'm quoting, so I'm going to use this word. He said, you suck at it. And I said, excuse me? and he said, you realize that being a doctor means you have to deal with patients and listen to them. And I said, that's not the kind of doctor I'll be. And he said, that's the only kind of doctor there is. And I said, well, I want to be a different kind. And he said, well, doctors work with patients and understand what's wrong and talk to them. And he said, you don't like that as the things you do. He said, why don't you become a researcher? And I said, how do you do that? He said, well, you're kind of already doing it. And so they worked as a department, several professors, to help me find a graduate school. And I was able to go to graduate school on a full ride, tuition and fees waived, everything paid, and even had a fellowship to teach at TCU here in Fort Worth. And I spent 4 years in a discipline called physical chemistry, solid state optics and optoelectronics, math, and a lot of nanotechnology. That's a picture of my dissertation. I dug it out and took a photo of it. It's about 285 pages. And I published lots and lots of things, all kinds of journal publications, had patents, and I decided to become a professor. And I took a role at SMU in Dallas from 1998 through 2000 in the Department of Chemistry as a professor, teaching PChem and having graduate students and things like that. And then had something that was an opportunity that I took. So I'll go to the next slide. We had some things in the lab that worked. And not only did they worked really well. Back up just one right there. And we founded a company out of some nanotechnology research. It was a wound dressing that still exists today called Ultrazeal. That's a nanotechnology-based wound dressing. You pour it onto a combat wound or something like that. It aggregates and sticks together. It forms a wound. That company, rocketed up and then crashed pretty hard. I left academia at that point in time. And the company was doing fine and then didn't do so well. And it kind of shut down. It's been resurrected recently by some venture capitalists and sort of redeveloping things with the technology, which still exists. But, I left at that point in time and I wanted to change life. And I did some soul searching and learned that people with math degrees, astronomy degrees, meteorology degrees, things like that are in an area where the things that big companies do require that kind of math skill in order to figure out what's going on. And Wells Fargo hired me to do some forecasting and understand things for them. And I worked my way up to lead data science for the area that I work in now, which is for HR and corporate services. When you work in a company with 100,000, 200,000 people, there's lots of things. There's 4,000 people that change jobs per week. There are hundreds of new hires and hundreds of people that leave and compensation bands and all kinds of things going on. And a lot of that has to be studied and understood. And when you have a company of 50 people, you can do it in an Excel spreadsheet. When you have hundreds of thousands of people, it has to be done on servers. And the forecasting takes math that we learn in astronomy, physical chemistry, applied math, and things like that. And about 5 years ago, I was recruited away from Wells Fargo to lead data science for corporate services at Dell. So that's HR, legal, comp, finance, diversity, and a whole bunch of things. And Dell's a big company. We have 150,000 employees in 93 countries, massive servers of information. And that's been a great thing about Dell is when I needed a new server at Wells Fargo, I could spend a year justifying it. At Dell, they flip a switch or they find one laying around in the hallway because that's what they make and create. And so you can kind of see that this was not a career path. It was a lattice of events that happened, opportunities, things that I studied, areas that I kind of wound up in, and certainly places where I had to make decisions about what I was interested in and what I considered important rather than choosing the option that was going to guarantee that I'd be led to a specific career. And so today I continue my role leading that data science for corporate services at Dell. And it's a great role. I've got people reporting to me and a lot of analytics and a lot of things that we do every day. I work from home. Most of Dell's employees work at home. Even before COVID, we had a lot of home. We have a saying that, we pass out our laptops emblazoned with the words, "This is my office." And we work together a lot. And at this point, I could take a few questions about my background if you'd like, but I'm going to shift focus because in talking about what I do today, I want to explain how the world is changing for the people who are choosing their high school careers to move into college and to take on some of the challenges that we are facing just in this decade alone, associated with the mass of technology, internet, and things like that. So if you'd like, I can take some questions, kind of about me at this point in time, or we can shift focus and talk a little bit about what you as students and parents need to consider as options for where you want to take your career and your college education?
Not seeing anything show up in the chat just yet. Does anybody have anything they'd like to toss out there, or?
I do
I
have
do have
one
one
question
question
for
for
John,
John.
and that is for any students who may be on with us today who perhaps haven't taken their grades seriously and are, already in high school and are maybe thinking, oh, it's too late to get my grades on track or whatever. What encouragement, as someone who kind of described yourself as not really applying yourself so much on the grades, what encouragement would you have for them? Just in terms of when you said there's a certain path everyone assumes you have to have in a certain portfolio, and that's not always the case. So how could someone who has allowed themselves to get some C's and whatnot view themselves in a different light and prepare themselves for applications for college and such?
Great question. So first, the grades are simply a yardstick that are used to measure how much effort you put into the exams and into finishing things in your coursework. Now, I'm not going to say that they are not important, because doing those things, completing your coursework, turning things in, and ensuring that you understand things and asking questions and being a part of class is a critical set of skills for any future. But what I am telling you is that when we look at the echelons of colleges, there's, of course, your Ivy Leagues, your Harvards and Yales, and outside of the Ivy League, there's your Stanfords and things like that. And they're great. I'm sure they're fabulous institutions. I've had a chance to visit a few of them and, see some of the faculty present brilliant things, and the student body there is brilliant. And then you have an echelon of colleges like UT Austin and Texas A&M that take a certain percentage of our Texas students, and that echelon, I keep using that term, that group of students is at a higher and higher class rank. But you have thousands of accredited universities where gifted professors will accept your commitment to understanding material and participating in their classes with welcome open arms. And when you finish, only in a small category of human beings does the degree and where you came from. And many of those people, you don't really want to be your friends. If they consider that the importance and value of you is the name of the college on that piece of paper, then it's not really a good relationship to start. But everyone else, the vast majority, is, where'd you go to college? And that's a discussion point associated with the opportunity to understand where you went in this country, what you studied, and what kinds of things were your experiences in college. When I say that, what I am telling you is there's a fit for every set of GPA, provided your academic interest is in studying and learning things in college. I'm not going to say you can go to college without applying yourself, studying, and doing work. There is a young man who was a graduate of Grapevine High School, and he graduated 2 years ago, and he was headed to a college that he wasn't very interested in and wanted to study history. And I took a look in some counseling at that college and saw that they didn't really have a history program, no graduate school in history and no specific fundamental history. And I said, well, what do you want to study with history? And he said, well, I'd like to be able to write books and teach. And I said, well, this college only has a teaching degree in history, and it's really in the Department of Geoinformation Services and Geography as a teaching program, which is fine, but I don't think there's a depth of history. And I said, you realize that up at University of North Texas, there's a program in history that has a doctorate, and they also teach things about Civil War and historical events, and have symposia on these kinds of things. And if you go there, it's not incredibly difficult to get into from a GPA. And he had problems with his GPA, but he loved history. He was accepted. He's been on the dean's list ever since, and he's graduating in 1.5 years. So he will be graduating this May 2 years after he started, and he's headed to graduate school at Georgetown, Oxford, or somewhere like that in history. He's been taking 18 to 20 hours every semester, loving every second of it, and it's completely opened. So it is really about what do you want from college rather than your degree.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a couple questions in the chat, John, if you want me to read those to you, or
Sure, yeah.
if you can see those.
Pull them up.
Okay.
So when you look for an undergraduate college, should you choose a school with a good graduate program in your field? Not necessarily at all. I just gave an example of a school that has a graduate program and an undergraduate program. What I would say for an undergraduate program is to be, if you have an interest in a specific field, to be sure that that college offers a major or a selection of courses in that field, because it is difficult to study oceanography at a landlocked university that doesn't really have a degree in it. If that's a strong interest of yours, I would look closer to the coast. But if you are interested in studying math and there is a specific math program, a degree in math applied or theoretical at your particular institution, the professors at accredited universities are well trained in teaching those undergraduate classes. Graduate school is the time where you can look across the country at graduate programs and find that perfect fit. But your undergraduate institution should really be there to teach you and mentor you in the options of what to study. What you find is that it's the inverse of what you think about school. The more that you learn with each successive degree, the dumber you actually feel. So when you graduate from high school, you are a rocket scientist. You're a genius. You're smarter than your parents for sure, smarter than any teacher that you had, and you're ready to go off and change the world. When you get to college, you begin to realize there's a library full of stuff that you don't quite know yet, but you're still smarter than everyone around. As you start getting close to graduating from college, you begin to realize, wow, there's a lot of smart people in this world. When you go to graduate school and you realize that some professor has spent his entire life studying the genome of one particular flea and has 50 more years of work to do to get to that, you begin to realize that there are really brilliant people in this world who have devoted their life to producing book after book of the same information. So, that's kind of what I can say. Focus your undergrad on a place that is geared toward teaching in undergrad. If you do not know what you want to study, I'm going to tell you my biggest advice is to go to a liberal arts college that offers lots and lots of degree programs for you to look at and test out a bunch of them, especially during your freshman and sophomore year. So in majoring in something broad like mathematics versus something more specific like comp sci, what I would tell you is to major in college in what you are interested in solving problems with. If you love math and are interested in solving problems in math, study that and become very dedicated to that. If you are interested in computer science and coding and understanding and solving problems for coding, do that. Do not focus your degree on what you think will get you a job, because the employer, as I'm about to tell you, isn't looking for a degree for what they want you to do for your job. It's very different. What we are looking for is the capability of critical thinking and strategic problem solving. So that's what you should focus your effort on, is becoming a person who is deeply interested in a subject in college. Take advantage of college to study the things that you want to learn so much about that it's a joy to learn. And what is Dell actively recruiting for? Well, let's kind of talk about that, because we have 150,000 people that work for us, and they range from the hardest of hardcore. Now understand, Michael Dell at the top, employee number one at this company, did not finish college and was actually studying business at University of Texas, has donated multiple buildings and things. So we are not necessarily talking about a employer or a company that is focused on, well, you have a degree in engineering, therefore you get to be an engineer. People at Dell solve problems together in groups. We don't focus on this is your job because that's what you studied. And so let's talk a little bit about that now. Let's go to the next slide and talk about really where we are from the future of work for students that are today. And I'm going to talk about jobs right now. I work in HR and I study a lot of information about how employees work and how they are productive. And the old concept was employees impact the bottom line. The more employees you have, the more there's a cost, and you want to balance how many widgets you produce against how much employees cost. That's changed. If Michael Dell wanted to find a way to make lots of money and employees cost too much, he would simply invest all of his money in the stock market and close this thing down. We are much more successful in terms of being a company, doing the things that serve our customers, ensuring that we all have roles and opportunities as a company that produces solutions for everyone that buys the things that we do as products and solutions than we ever could be if we just treated the employees as a bottom line. We treat the employees as an investment that's really 5 years plus of time before we've really reaped all the benefits from bringing them on and making them a part of our culture. The old concept said that employment was corporate. We have a corporation, we have a hierarchy, and we drive what people do based on the company's needs. Everything is strategic now. We take a look at what we expect the customers to need 5 years from now, 10 years from now. I'll be showing you some data on how that's changing. And we take a look at really what you guys are studying in high school and try to influence that all the way coming up through your college careers to make sure that we have enough of a labor force. A highly skilled problem solver graduating today has their choice of places like Apple and Dell and Amazon. And I'm not talking about someone that is packing things at the Amazon warehouse that's local. I'm talking about the heavy duty problem solving that they have for trying to ensure that all of that logistics works across the globe where they deliver things to their customers. And we know that it's competitive to hire those people. It used to be that the job defines the scope of employment. You heard me talking a minute ago about, your role and your job. We don't look at it as you're hired to be an accountant or you're hired to be a data scientist. We hire people based on what the market says the skills are needed for work. The old idea that you were trained in something and you're going to do that and work your way up a rigid hierarchy for the rest of your life, it's gone. It's completely gone. You will be introduced to many, many things: project management, consulting, projects related to managing other people, team dynamics, producing papers, all kinds of things within a company of our size and scope to try and ensure that the projects are solved. It used to be, and COVID experiment, you might say, COVID's obviously been a terrible thing. It's also an experiment that allowed everything from companies like Dell to education to test a boundary that they would not have tested if we didn't have the social distancing that was put in place. And the truth is, it largely worked as an experiment. I believe, and I'm almost positive that the core is true, that companies are going to shift from big cubicle-filled buildings to many people working at home and occasional trips for teams to come together in physical environments in conference rooms that are built more like coffee shops than they are that rigid cubicle type of structure. And I know that that's true because Dell's already done it, Microsoft has already done it. It's kind of the way that things are, because the goal is not to have companies' hours being tracked and keystrokes being tracked. It's to see, can their projects be enhanced by working together? And it used to be that processes drive our improvement, meaning we've got a process. This is how we file paperwork. This is how we get a client. This is how we get a customer, and we improve those processes. We've now learned that we analyze things. And because we have so much data tracking so many things, data and analytics are what drive the decision-making inside of companies now. So when we look at that future framework, we have to talk to you guys about the fact that we want you to consider yourself an investment. We want you to consider all of the skills and all the things you learn are of value to us because you're learning to solve problems. I keep coming back to that. You have to want to solve problems. Those problems can be customer service related, they can be writing related, they can be data science related, they can be database architecture related, but you have to want to solve problems. We are going to drive our employment based on what our customers need. And you might say, well, we don't know. Yeah, we do. We know a lot about what they're going to need and what they're going to face over the next 10 years. Our market doesn't define how many employees we're going to need. It defines what skills we're going to want. And those skills are not what you think. It used to be, what computer languages do I need to learn? Everything is point and click today. It's not to say that base coding skills are not important, but what we're looking for is problem solving capability. True, we're going to need coders and database architects. And if that is your passion, please go into it. But to drive Dell, we need people that solve problems. We also need to understand that your future of work, unless you are working in specific manufacturing or specific offices, doctor's offices, even some of those are going remote, you will have a remote component to your future work. You will have a remote learning to your future development as a person. You will have to get used to data and analytics in the thought processes and decision making that you make. Can we go to the next slide? So this is a day in data, and we have this slide from 2020, and it talks about at the very bottom, kind of in the center, right above the guy's head if he were laying down, there's a couple of accumulated digital universes of data. And we have to introduce a new term that the mathematicians have introduced. We've all heard of gigabytes because we get little memory sticks with gigabytes. And we've all heard of terabytes because that's what our hard drives have. And then we make bytes, we've shipped to exabytes and zettabytes, and we're not quite to a yottabyte, but we're expecting to get there. And those are real terms that the Society of whatever determines those terms has created. When we were in 2013, we were at 4.4 zettabytes of accumulated digital data. That's unprocessable. There's no way that that much information could ever be fed through all the computers we have. We were just storing it in places. Well, in 7 years, we went to 10 times that, and understand we went from a total amount of information that we couldn't process to 10 times that information, and we are accelerating that rate. Every day, all of the junk that you guys text each other, all of the attached connected devices, all of the cars, and things are producing more data than our systems, servers, and storage have time to keep up with. It's absolutely amazing. Just the simple number of tweets that come out from Twitter itself require reams of data scientists to analyze trends in, not to analyze the individual information. It requires data scientists to study simply trends of how things are moving in specific directions. And everything that we are doing is becoming more and more connected. And so as I talk about that, I can tell you that we're running into two fundamental problems. First is storage. And the second is, how do we process it? And these are not problems that I have to solve or your parents or your teachers have to solve. They're problems, and I'll show you why in just a second, that you will have to solve. And you will have to solve with companies like Dell and Microsoft and Google and other places, because none of this is showing any signs of slowing down. It's getting faster, better, and more effective for us, but we don't quite know where the limit and the edge is going to hit, where we're not sure what to do with all of this. If we can go to the next slide. This explains why there's so much data. So I'm going to go through these slides a little bit at a time, and I want you to think about this set of questions. First is, what happens when it becomes really easy to generate data? The second is, where does the inflection point? When we are dealing with a process or something that lives and grows and moves, if it becomes something that humanity with billions of people take off and start using, an inflection point occurs. We call it a hockey stick in economics. When that occurs, things change about that. Stock trading has inflection points. Everything has an inflection point. And it's when that event occurs that everything associated with it changes. And what I want to ask is, when we look at this plot, and I go through a few of these things with you, first is what happens when it becomes easy to generate data? Where does the inflection point occur? That's the easy question on this. And then what, leading to this, what happens to data volume when you connect everyone? And understand, we're living in a universe where everyone is already connected. A lot of these things occurred because we connected people. Now, anything you create is instantly connected to everyone else. And so the data you generate, and we can imagine something where instead of a photograph, which is what this is talking about, we have 3D holograms that take up 1 million times the space. If they're all connected to everyone and everyone is using them, where does that data go? So if we talk about this, there's some things. Photography as itself was invented in the 1820s. And not much happened after that. We went to the 1890s when they made color versions of it. Kodak began to market it. And even between Kodak marketing it, and you can see this axis is 0 billion, 100 billion, 200 billion, 300 billion, 400 billion, all the way up. Not much was happening the first 100 years or so that we were dealing with photographs. Even as we approached 150, Polaroid releasing an instant camera took us from 1 million images to 2.3 billion images. And that we thought was a lot of images. In 1973, the first digital camera patent was received, and we had about 10 billion images. And Kodak released digital cameras, and it went up to 57. There's a little bit of an inflection point there, but something happened. And if we can go to the next slide, in the year 2000, most of you weren't born at that point in time. This is the first digital photo ever sent by a phone. An engineer had his daughter born. He was bored and sitting in the waiting room while his wife was recovering from a C-section. He wrote a short bit of code, used his phone to take the picture, and took the photograph and moved it from his phone onto a web server and then emailed it to his family members. And that is the first photo. That little girl, born in 2000, is the first digital photo ever sent over a cellular network. And let's look at what happens after that. If we go to the next slide. The first digital camera phone was mass produced in 2000. We went to 86 billion. And at that point, the scale goes logarithmic. We have an increase which is occurring in the tens of billions per week in terms of our numbers. The iPhone caused a rather rapid explosion. Instagram caused a bigger explosion. And we are now storing digitally per year between 1.4 and 1.5 trillion images every single year, up from a few million when photography was first introduced. And we are expecting a leveling off simply because every human being now has a phone and they're producing 3.5 images per day of their cat or whatever it is. Then, that's the limit of what we have for our photographs. But the storage of this is enormous. If we can go to the next slide, I want to talk to you a little bit about a big bunch of data. So I've just explained to you where data used to come from. And historically, it came from computers. We had punch cards, computers, and Apollo, engineers building things and creating stuff for data. In the 1990s, we created a way for data to be generated by people. And that's things like that photography I just showed you. All the photographs mostly are created by people. But now we've had a creep up of automation. And this goes from that 4.4 all the way up to automation. You can see in the middle there are documents and emails, weblogs, and social media. That took up a lot of space. Now, our sensor data, our watches, automatic geolocation, our cars, our things like that are driving this faster than all of that photography combined. It's unbelievable what we have in terms of the amount of information. And it continues. Every Tesla that rolls off the line is sending up telemetry left, right, and center that has to move through servers, and we're not slowing that down. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to look at the first smart nation. In Singapore, they have done away with cash. They have national IDs as part of their phone. There are no locks. Everything is electronic locks. Everything is there's a Smart Nation sensor platform. It automatically detects and help you get on the bus and travel. Smart urban mobility. They have automatic, work to get you in the car, work to get you in the doctor's office. Everything is digital and automated. And as they brought this sensor system and everything else online, they produce about 1 petabyte of data per week for the information they have in that. And that rack up there is a Dell Edge server that is designed to store about 1 petabyte of data, keep it in short-term memory and process it. By 2030, they will be producing 1 petabyte per minute. So they need 52 of those right now to cover a year's worth of their information. We will be producing that in this one city alone per minute. And if all of the manufacturing of every single company like Dell and every single company like Hewlett Packard and Microsoft and all of those companies worked together today to produce all of the servers that they could, we could not even come close to 1 petabyte of storage per minute. So between now and 2030, you, as in you students, are going to have to figure out how to deal with that much information. And it is a good problem to have because it ensures that the world's connected, that we have services, that everything works, and the careers are going to continue to develop in this area. If we can go to the next slide, I want to talk to you about, kind of advice. And this is where we shift from the idea of the question I typically ask, which is, what should I study to work at Dell? And I start by telling you whatever you want. If you are interested in becoming a server architecture software engineer, by all means, study a discipline that is related to computers, computer architecture, and computer science, or at least have a strong interest in that field as something that you study and keep connected to. Because if you know nothing about computers and their architecture, it's difficult to pick up on the fly, and we don't do as much of that kind of training. But we hire people from many, many, many disciplines. What we want is for you to be passionate about something that you are studying in college. Become a significant expert at something you are passionate about that is real. And I put that real on as a slight bit of warning, because there are some things like becoming an expert at all of the Marvel movies is expertise, and you can know everything about those kinds of things, but there are fewer jobs for that particular discipline of expertise and depth. And it is okay to have hobbies and things that you want, but from a career perspective, you need to study one of the disciplines that is real. The second important question that I need you to be able to answer always goes something like this. And those of you that are here at Grapevine all know Mrs. Trang, or at least have heard of her and have been around her. The questions that you need to learn to answer go something like this. What do you think that Bronte meant to say about women's social class with Jane's ambiguous position in Victorian society, and contrast this with modern essays on feminism that we read in class? That question is exactly what you need to be able to look up information about, prepare your thoughts on, and then provide a cogent response that may not be the right response. The teacher may know that's not quite right, but you need to be able to answer questions that don't have easy solutions. There are no jobs at Dell that depend upon you filling in standardized tests, but we have hundreds of things where the easy problem has been solved, and we provide you with a messy ball of yarn and say, we really need you to figure this out. And I will tell you that the liberal arts associated with English, history, those kinds of things teach that much, much better than the disciplines of science and math, because the answers are very sticky and difficult to understand. So one of the people that can help you, even if you have not been great with your grades and great with the things that you've wanted to study, becoming skilled in those kinds of problems and answering those and being able to sound very articulate in providing your response and receiving feedback on it is the greatest skill you could ever develop from an employment perspective at a place like Dell. The third thing that I want to talk about is learning to work in teams. And sometimes GT individuals have a little bit of introversion. Sometimes they're extroverts, but sometimes there's a little bit of introversion associated with them. And when I say teams, what I don't mean is Dell puts all 150,000 people into a basketball arena and says, work together and find your way. What we do is to say, we've got a problem. We think it's going to take 6 resources. We need somebody that can code, somebody that can write, somebody that can project manage, and somebody that can manage the entire team. And we put those 3 or 4 people together to solve that problem and estimate that it's going to take them 3 months to do. And they have to work together. They have deliverables, they have projects, they have updates, they have management they have to work with, they have emails they have to send, they have meetings they have to attend, and they have to work together. And then 6 months from now, they're all dispersed into other projects, possibly with some of the same people, but possibly with brand new people, all again, following that process of contributing things. So in your classes, when you have these group projects, you are developing the skill of taking the requirements from your teacher, interpreting that and working together as a team to ensure that you deliver a really fabulous group project to your teacher to turn in at the end for whatever it is. And this is not to simply say it's a project for one program. The plays that the high school puts on, the athletic competitions that they put on, working together as a team is one of the ways that you will be employed in the future. There are very few opportunities for something like Einstein working by himself to develop E equals MC squared. First, I will tell you, love Einstein. He was more brilliant than I could ever be, but he got lucky that the easy problems hadn't been solved yet when they landed on. E equals MC squared is only a few letters and numbers, and it's not as difficult as unsnarling the problem I just told you about with all of that data coming in, having to compress it and figure out what to do with it. That's going to take more people than just Einstein to do. And the last, this could be the most important thing, is to learn to be an effective communicator in your own voice. And that means ensuring that you can write and speak very effectively about your ideas and your problem solving. This is not to say that you have to be the leader or in charge of everything or responsible for every aspect, but you need to be able to give your input to the team, to the problem solving, and with the experience that you have backing up this slide for whatever it is you're trying to solve. So I don't think there's another slide, but that's my advice to you about the roles that we have. And so is that my last slide? Yes, awesome. So I think we can take some questions if you have any.
I'm going to take us back to the regular screen since the slide portion is over. But yes, everyone, please take an opportunity to type something into the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question, we can do that too, as long as we don't run into a situation with lots of people talking on top of each other. Then we might have to go back to chat, but I'm comfortable giving it a try. If anybody has some questions for John.
John, while we're waiting for the chat questions to come in, when you and I spoke the other day, you provided a really clear explanation of your thoughts on what sequence of math courses our students should be wanting to take, like in 8th grade and whatnot. And we have about half of the people here today are representing high school, but there's quite a few middle school and even elementary, where I thought it might be good, even if it's just the parent and not the student, to hear that from you.
I forgot to stress this. And my wife Becky reminded me of it earlier. This is very important. So in order to have experience in college that allows you to be prepared for the kinds of things they are going to throw at you, I don't recommend specifically that you pack your entire schedule with every AP class that Grapevine High School has. But I do recommend the following, that you take at least one AP science class. And the reason is that that level of science exposes you to a college curriculum associated with science. They call it AP for a reason. The second thing that I recommend that you take is one or possibly two of the AP liberal arts programs. It could be art history, it could be English, it could be composition course, that type of thing that exposes you to that very difficult critical thinking that I was giving with that Bronte type of question. And the third, and this is kind of a requirement backing up, is AP Calculus. And let me kind of go into that for a second, because that a lot of times says on one side of the aisle, well, AP Calculus, it's hard. It's hard for everyone who takes college level calculus, but it synthesizes two things in your understanding of problem solving. First, how to repeat problems over and over again until you distinguish patterns in them. And second, it teaches you to raise your hand or take your homework to a teacher or go to a tutor or go to one of your friends and say, I don't understand this part. There are very few people in the world who understand calculus the first time they go through it, and most of them wind up being engineers or mathematicians, because if they're gifted in it and it's a breeze to them, lots of times it's a beautiful enough set of symmetry, languages, and explanations of equations that they continue with it from that point. For everyone else, it's a grind, but it is a gateway to the thought process associated with hard college courses, things that you probably won't understand the first time they are given to you in a class. And so backing up from that, it means that in your junior high or middle school age point, Algebra 1 should be something that you take in 7th or 8th grade, depending on where you are in your program, or even before you get to high school, because the sequence of math classes allowing you to take that AP Calculus by the time you finish high school gives you that understanding. And here's part of the reason why. I'm just going to give this as an explanation of careers. Dell currently hires a group of people who are called software engineers or computer engineers. There's a program in it at UT Austin. There's also a program in it at UT Arlington. It's a great program if you want to study computer architecture and things like that. We pay starting above $100,000 a year to those graduates with a bachelor's degree in that program. And we don't pay that because, well, that's just what they're worth. We pay that because we're competing with Apple and Microsoft and everyone else for them. There are not enough of those people. So studying that type of thing leads you to a career that starting off, your income is very high. That's not a reason to choose. Remember my doctor analogy, my parents were trying to get me to become a doctor. There's certainly an income associated with a doctor. That's not a reason to choose that. But if you do not have AP Calculus, your road to get through the college courses associated with an engineering or a science framework in your career is starting off one rung behind. Calculus is the fundamental basis for every single science or math that exists. There's nothing that doesn't use it. There is nothing that doesn't require it. And you may as well have an opportunity to get introduced to it in high school. And even if you retake it, it's far better to get a C in high school calculus and retake it in college than it is to have no introduction to it at all and then be hit in this 3-day-a-week college course associated with it, where it's being thrown at you without all of the opportunities that high school gives you for asking the teacher for their time and their attention.
Thanks. That
There
was
a
awesome.
question. Oh,
Go ahead. Who has the question?
this is Amy. There was a question about an internship. How important do you think that trying to get an internship with a company during undergraduate years is, and what can we do to get an internship?
Internships are fabulous ways to get an introduction to a company. Dell competes so hard to get enough interns to fill our ranks in the summer. So what you'll find, the old world of competing for an internship that doesn't pay and that kind of thing, it's gone. We actually hire our interns. This is the first summer this didn't happen because of COVID, but We hire our interns, at the beginning of their junior year to come in, or the beginning of their senior year. Sometimes we try and get them to come for both years. And they actually come, and we pay for their housing in nice apartments that are around Dell's campus down in Round Rock. And it's a fabulous thing. You get an introduction. And these are not just scientists or engineers. These are HR employees, finance employees, business employees, all those different things. And we provide you with a 2-year introduction. The reason for that is we're begging you to come and work for us after that. Internships are incredibly valuable. They are an incredible way for you to be given projects that you can put on your resume and say, the team that I worked with was responsible for solving the XYZ problem. Here were the things I contributed to it and how it helped Dell as a company. And that helps you get a job. So I think that they're incredibly valuable. And the old world of trying to get an internship by standing in line, wearing a suit and begging and pleading and hoping that you can get a job that doesn't pay anything is gone. Companies are competing to get interns now to come in and take the opportunity to do real work for them, not getting coffee or something. And we have an entire portal. If you look at Dell internship, we've got an entire portal on our website that takes everyone through it, and we beg and plead students from all over the country to come.
Hi, Dr. St. John. This is Julie Leslie, and I apologize. I'm so dark.
That's okay.
I'm with GCISD, and thank you so much for giving your time tonight to all of us as adults and to the students listening. I have a question about soft skills and your opinion on that. In previous years, we would talk with students about the importance of soft skills, such as a firm handshake, which is not existent right now, being able to make good eye contact, dressing professionally. Of course, you did speak to effective written and communication skills, but some of those other soft skills, in your opinion, has the list of what those soft skills would be, has that list changed, or what would your top soft skills be?
It's changed a lot. And part of that is the remote environment has changed. COVID obviously has changed things. You still need to be able to generate a resume, but today's resumes are almost always applied via an electronic medium to provide that resume up into an electronic portal, typically through the phone. So in many cases, those resumes are created. They also live in a different world on tools like LinkedIn and those kinds of things. So some of the soft skills that you need to have are things that are critical, such as an online presence. When I say an online presence, I do not mean strange YouTube videos of you doing interesting things outdoors, but I'm talking about an online presence associated with things like LinkedIn, like Facebook, like other profiles that are probably more popular, and people are looking at me like, he still uses LinkedIn. Yeah, he's an aging fossil. But whatever that current medium is of that type of business effective communication about yourself, building that profile and that showcase of a portfolio of your information is a critical skill. It is still critical, and I wish there was almost a way to have a cotillion in business. I don't know if everyone still does cotillion. In middle school, my daughter did, and my other kids. But in business, the art of small talk associated with when you have a large gathering of business people and everyone is having their soft drink and their water and stuff like that, and they branch off in groups of 2 or 3, being able to walk up to a group of 2 or 3 with your name tag on, it says, hi, I'm whatever, and introducing yourself and then getting to know the people that are there is actually just as critical as all of the coding and stuff like that you could be able to do. Because we don't expect you at Dell to do anything in the dark by yourself. We expect you to work together as a team. And so learning to be congenial, to be a part of discussions, to understand how people are talking to each other, to spend it. And there's a required period on any major Zoom call where there's 2 or 3 minutes spent where people talk about the weather and their kids, what else is going on. And that's just part of effective communication in business today. It's how we stay abreast of the fact that we are humans and we work with each other instead of simply being a drone sitting in front of a computer typing things all day. And believe me, you have to be able to do this as a student and as a young adult moving up into college.
So I'm wondering about some of our teenagers who might be really great at presenting, at building, say, an online website, so to speak, through a free platform or an inexpensive platform, where one tab would be that digital resume and another tab or drop-down menu might be experiences they had in high school, advanced classes they took, perhaps
Absolutely.
an internship. So it sounds like you would recommend something like that for our high school students.
I would highly recommend that you start, even if you don't think it's important, you start building that portfolio of the projects you've worked on, the skills that you have, the things that you have done, the critical events that you've had, and things like that. Some of them will gradually become less relevant to the career that you have. It may be that your high school lifeguarding job drops off as you move forward and you become a something at a major company. But that journey is going to require that those sections of that move forward with you so that you can make each step to the next part. And it is going to, I see this portion here, build trust and network, knowing what other people do and how they contribute and what it is that they exist in, what framework they do their work, is so critical to your capability of being a contributor to your work and your role. Any students have any questions about, life at Dell, working for Dell? I will tell you that I interviewed for Dell, wasn't expecting it. They reached out to me via LinkedIn of all places, and it was just kind of a surprise. And I had been presenting and publishing papers on HR analytics and data science and things like that. And they said, we'd like you to consider working for us. And I said no, and then I said no, and then I said no. And I went to visit their offices here, which were the old Perot Systems offices. And it wasn't very comfortable to me. There were lots of cubicles. It wasn't really what I wanted. And I turned them down. And the head of kind of the HR services organization called me and said, would you consider just making one trip down to Round Rock and visiting us? And when I got to the campus, everyone was in jeans and t-shirts. Michael Dell wears jeans and a work shirt almost every day. He comes out of his office about once a month and will work with the sales force or the high performing sales force right outside of his office. And he'll physically take calls for laptops and try and upsell people, saying that he's Michael Dell, convince them to buy an extra mouse or something like that, and puts, a lot of energy into that type of thing. And it's, a building that reminds me of a college campus, really, with walkways. And I took the role immediately, after seeing that. So the culture was something that really agreed with me in terms of that. And you'll find that choosing a college is a lot more about ensuring, A, that it has things that you're interested in studying, and that the culture of that college fits you. That'll take you a lot farther than choosing it for any prestige or anything else, because you're going to be there for 4 years and you want it to be an experience that's enriching to you. Same thing with work. You definitely want work to have a culture that you like.
Yeah. Amy, do we have any other questions that have been put into the chat that you can see?
Someone just asked if I think most colleges will be virtual. I don't. I think that the institution of learning, just like the Institute of Work, depends a lot on people being able to come together to share ideas. I've been fortunate to go to a lot of academic conferences and a lot of professional development conferences and things like that. And there's simply nothing like groups of humans coming together who are smart in what they do and working together to brainstorm ideas and discuss what it is they do about the problems that they have. But I do believe that there will be shifts in colleges where certain required courses, background information, and things don't mean that you have to be on the college campus to take them and be there. But I hate to think about replacing the experience you get of having all the people around you who are focused on the college degree and the college experience not being there where you want to work. So, and I see, if I'm a brand new professional just starting out, what is your advice on how I get my foot in the door at a huge company like Dell? How would you do that? Well, first, it's very interesting. I find a lot of people ask me, how do I get a job at such and such? And you ask, did you apply? Well, no. So the first step is really to, have that kind of thought to yourself about, well, I want a career and I'm thinking about doing this type of thing, and I'm interested in working at Dell. And then it's amazing what systems like LinkedIn and even Dell's website and things will tell you about the number of people who do that job and have programs in things and allow you to do that. That's called networking. And it doesn't mean reaching out to the CFO and saying, I'm interested in working at Dell. Do you have any jobs? What it means is cultivating and understanding the kind of work people do, and then shifting your experiences, your resume, your work, and the things that you have to where it fits the jobs that are open. And we have hundreds of jobs opening a week. And so if you're a young professional just starting out, first thing, make sure you have a resume that's tailored toward getting that kind of job. And second, make sure that you're applying for the role specifically. So those are two things that are, advice from getting a foot in the door, because it's amazing how many people don't apply, are just kind of hoping to find a way into a job. And so, that's some of my advice. Another is to leverage people like me that are in your community that work for a big company, like ask, hey, can I drop you my resume? Can I talk to you? That type of thing. It's very important. Study abroad. So great question. I don't know, will it be as important, but I do know that big companies are multinational now. And so it's never considered really whether if Dell has a site in the Czech Republic, then we hire people in the Czech Republic. We hire people in Panama. We hire people in countries all over the world. But studying abroad, I think that there are opportunities for American students in countries that are outside of the US, but I think that you need to ensure that the accreditation of the courses and the programs and the degrees, and they'll all be very proud of what it is that they do, but ensure that where you are going has the accreditation equivalent of our bachelor's degrees in the United States. There's something very special about a high school degree. It can never be taken away from you once you get it. There's something very special about a college degree. Once you have that college degree, whatever it is in, it's forever something that's with you that you can carry around as an example of a clear body of work that you did that is quite advanced and quite difficult. And so you're now all of a sudden in a class of people who can carry around with them proof that you have done a set of requirements that ensure that you can think, can communicate, can answer difficult problems, and have a certain minimum level of knowledge in the field that you're in. And with study abroad, I'm not gonna say, hey, you can get a better education here than you can at Oxford. Obviously, your British organizations, your Irish, your Western, those kinds of things have great programs. There are language problems if you go to other countries that don't speak English, and if you have the capability of speaking those languages, look at it. Just ensure that where you're looking at that college program, that it's not set up as a government-sponsored institute that isn't really set up with a full accreditation, or that it isn't set up with a for-profit type of thing or that type of thing. Ensure that what you're looking at is an institution with an academic tradition that's accredited, and that you look back and you see, is it equivalent? Because we have accreditation for our colleges in the United States that says they meet specific standards that they've all agreed together are what are requirements for bachelor's. And that's what the companies do look at is that university accredited? Average employee life cycle, it's about 5.5 years. But what we found is once somebody completes that 5.5 years, many employees stay for 20. And so one of the things about Dell is it's a benevolent dictatorship, is what I always like to say. It is one person at the top, but he's brilliant and very good and very focused on the company being successful. And you're not often lucky to have that type of organization with the values being set up by not just the CEO, but the founder of the company in his dorm room, to have as a company. And so a lot of people that get past that first 5 years and don't take a role with another company or move focus tend to stay for a long time. And there's some financial components to that, things that kind of fall into your long-term incentive. And then there's simply the culture that you begin to really like, and you can see that the variety of problems you're solving are changing year in and year out. And that's what's really exciting to me. I want to solve problems. And so I can see that being here affords me that capability of solving tough problems. And that's, what makes me excited. Well, I can see that we're a little bit over, but I'm very thrilled to have talked to you. I can obviously answer more questions if anyone has any, but
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to jump in here really quick, and if there's anybody else that has one more that they want to type in there, you're welcome to do that. And even if we have some folks starting to sign off, I'm sure John would be happy to answer that question. But I just want to thank you, John. I don't think this could have been a better start to our series. So I just am eternally grateful for you for that. And I hope everyone has enjoyed it as much as I have. I want to thank everyone who attended. I know some of you are members of ours, but some of you are not. So if you are not a member, I hope you will maybe give us a look at our website. That is dc-sage.org. And there's information on there about membership. And most importantly, I just want to remind everyone that this is the first in our series. So I'm excited to tell the folks that stayed with us till the bitter end here that our next Your Future, Your Path is scheduled for Thursday, March 4th. It will also be at 6:30 in the evening. And our guest and speaker that evening will be Jennifer Spand. And I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, Joe. Tell me if it's not. But Jennifer is a career diplomat. So we're really going to kind of switch it up and do lots of different things during this series. So I'm just going to share with y'all a little bit about her background in hopes that you will join us on the 4th. So Jennifer has been, she has served in the U.S. State Department under 4 presidential administrations, 2 Republican, 2 Democratic. She's been posted to Mexico, Cambodia, Chile, Malaysia, in addition to assignments in DC. In the State Department's Operations Center, she's directed a $375 million in foreign investment to Ukraine and Belarus, and has managed relations with Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. She is currently in a 1-year fellowship as a foreign policy advisor and will become the director of the State Department's Haiti office this summer. So I hope if you are interested in hearing about that different career path, you will join us on Thursday, March 4th, or encourage your kiddos to join us. And the last thing that I just want to say is this is a new series for us, and we are very fortunate that we have a lot of wonderful members who have shared connections that they have, or members like John who have shared their backgrounds. But if anybody knows someone themselves or someone in their family or in their social circle that has an interesting career or an interesting path, please feel free to drop us an email and let us know that. Our hope is that this series can go on into next year, and we have some really great folks in the lineup for the rest of this year, but we would love to continue to do it next year for kids as well. So we're looking for you guys to help us make connections to people that you think would be interesting to our students. So I don't see anything else that's come in questions, but again, thank you so much, John. We really, really appreciate your time. And
thanks, everybody.
Go ahead and let everybody log off and stay warm this weekend. My goodness, crazy times.
Bye, everyone.
John.
Bye.
Kimberly, that went great.